All things considered, with as crazy as everything has been, there is still some semblance of good news in that Democrats are absolutely worried. The failures of Joe Biden and the Democratic agenda, the inability to appoint good judges, will result in a total collapse of the Democratic Party in 2022 in the midterms. Republicans might actually take the Senate and the House. Now, we don't know for sure, but Democrats are certainly worried. Independent voters are turning away in large numbers. And this is reflected in the approval rating of Joe Biden, which over the past several weeks has continued to tank, now reaching a new all-time low, according to several polls, and also extremely low in aggregate across the board. What does this mean? Well, I got to be honest. I'm not the most optimistic individual when it comes to the Republican Party. Certainly, people might come out and vote for Republicans, but if it's just the same old thing, then this doesn't change much. When people vote Republican, what happens? The Democratic agenda just kind of pauses. When people vote Democrat, the Democrats swing the wrecking ball and shatter things and burn them down. Now, there is potential that among the new victors in the Republican Party, with many of the establishment Republicans either leaving, panicking, retiring, we're going to get a wave of populist Republicans, people more in line with Donald Trump's agenda. Certainly, this could light a fire under the left and the Democrats, causing Democrats to retain control of the Senate and the House. Or it could result in real meaningful opposition to the disastrous Democratic agenda. As I'm recording this, there is a large conversation happening around, military advisors and Joe Biden. And we're learning that Biden has lied to the American people on numerous occasions. He has no real plan for COVID. It just seems to be getting worse. Hence, you're seeing this tank in his approval rating. The economy is facing shortages, food shortages, gas shortages, labor shortages, with no sign of improvement. And we still have to sit through this for another year. Which brings me to the inverse of this. A year in political terms may as well be eternity. So as much as right now we're seeing all of this bad news for the Democrats, they could certainly turn things around in the year they have to try and retain control of Congress. Now, the Republicans do have the Supreme Court, and that means with new rulings coming, Supreme Court with a conservative majority might actually light a fire under the Democrats, and we may see Democrats hold everything. Suffice it to say, though, the articles are starting to appear. Even CNN is saying Democrats will panic the moment they get this one poll. Clickbait, I know. What could that poll be? Well, we have one article from Yahoo saying Joe Biden is tanking among black voters. Why? Vaccine mandates. Interestingly, in a viral video, there's an NBA player who's saying, look, I've looked into the data. I don't think it's right for me. And an incredibly intelligent smackdown of these reporters. Now, I've seen a lot of people go toe-to-toe with some of the press, not having good answers, but having the right heart. Now, this guy nailed it, saying, I'm healthy, I have antibodies. And you see, right now, Joe Biden is the one who came out and said it. The black community is skeptical of the government. They don't trust the government. Now, he said Tuskegee Airmen, which are, who are World War II heroes, when he meant the Tuskegee experiments. But I think we all get the point. Joe Biden, Democrat, leader of his party, comes out and says, we get it. The black community does not trust the government, especially when it comes to vaccine mandates. And that means that's going to seriously impact their polling. So there's a lot that's got to happen. The Republicans got to get out and do the groundwork, go door to door, knocking on doors. The Democrats, of course, are going for rule changes. California is making vote by mail, universal mail-in voting permanent, and many other places are fighting for the same. Republicans aren't even getting rid of COVID-era rules on elections and securing their elections. So who knows what could happen? Top it all off with gerrymandering, and we just don't know. What we do know is right now, bad news for Democrats. Excellent sign for Republicans, with a long way to go before this race is anywhere near over. In fact, the midterm races haven't really even begun yet. But let's take a look at what's going on with Joe Biden's approval rating, why it's tanking, how people feel. And surprisingly, COVID plays a big role in this. People feel like Joe Biden ain't doing anything, and it's just getting worse. You got to imagine when Biden comes out and says, if you get vaccinated, no masks, then everyone says, OK. Then he comes out and says, wear a mask anyway and get a booster. People feel like we're going backwards. To that point, they say, you know what? I'm done with this guy. We need someone who can solve these problems. Well, let's read this before we get started. Head over to timcast.com to become a member and get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, as well as an ad-free experience when you peruse our amazing, fierce, and independent journalism. When you sign up for timcast.com, you're supporting our expansion, our hiring. We recently hired another individual. Building culture is one of our biggest goals. We don't just want to say, here's a bad thing that happened. We want to say, like, here's our values. Translated into the things we do, the way we live, the feelings we have, the things we believe in, the people we believe in. And so your support helps us build that culture out too. To a lot of people, it may seem silly, but I tell you this, politics is downstream from culture. And in essence, politics is irrelevant to the conversation. Judges will rule only if they feel it's socially acceptable. Their opinions are swayed by the culture of the day, which means if we aren't inspiring young people, standing up for freedom and translating that freedom into fun, then we're losing that culture war. Amazing. We're in a culture war. And still, what do we get? Conservatives fighting a political battle in a culture war. Not everybody, but let's get on that. So go to timcast.com, become a member, subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, share the show with your friends. We got the first story from Gallup. Just about a week ago, Biden's approval rating hits new low of 43%. But here's the news. Harris's is 49%. The reason this matters is that Democrats are betting big on Kamala Harris. The Hill says Democrats see Harris as a major player in the midterms. Why? Well, some people say it's because Joe Biden won't be president by the midterms. Yeah, well, we'll see. Perhaps. That'd be crazy. Others say it's because Joe Biden's approval rating is so low. If we had to choose who's going to be campaigning on behalf of our congressional Democrats, it ain't going to be the guy who's at 43%. We got a lady at 49%, right? Still, underwater across the board. But let's be real. With independent voters turning on Joe Biden, Kamala Harris is a safer bet. Gallup says 8 months after President Joe Biden's inauguration, his job approval rating has fallen 6 percentage points to 43%, the lowest of his presidency, a new all-time low. For the first time, a majority, 53%, now disapproves of Biden's performance. That is, however, only among Gallup's polling. Wait till you see the Civics polls and the Real Clear Politics. But they say these findings are from September 1st to 17th. Gallup poll that was conducted after the U.S. military evacuated more than 120,000 people from Afghanistan. The United States' exit from the nation's longest war was marred by the Taliban's quick takeover of most of the country. So this we understand. The latest drop in Biden's job approval score is the second significant decline seen since June. Biden's honeymoon ratings near 55% first faltered in July, falling to 50 amid rising COVID cases. Midway through the most recent polls field period, as U.S. COVID-19 cases, hospitalizations, and deaths continue to rise, Biden announced new directives to limit the spread of the disease, including vaccine requirements for private sector businesses, healthcare workers, and federal government contractors. Except for Donald Trump, every U.S. president since Harry Truman has enjoyed a honeymoon period characterized by above average approval ratings upon taking office. Biden's recent slides in approval put him in the company of Trump and Bill Clinton, whose ratings were at or below Biden's current 43% at some point in the first 8 months of their presidency. However, by September 1993, Clinton's approval ratings began to recover and average 50% that month. Thus, among elected presidents since World War II, only Trump has had a lower job approval rating than Biden does at a similar point in their presidencies. Independents show greatest decline in approval of Biden. This is big, my friends. This is it. You see, Republicans, of course they don't like Joe Biden. Democrats, of course they support Joe Biden. The independent voters are the people you need to convince to vote against them because they're the ones bouncing back and forth. I supported Democrats in the Democratic presidential primary, Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard. I really wanted to see them win despite their faults. I was hoping that if we could get someone like Tulsi or Yang in office, we could force a correction of the Democratic Party away from the crackpot far left and woke garbage. It didn't work. They opted for establishment crony with a woke edge, trying to unify the party. Well, I don't want to have anything to do with that. So I said, look, I like Trump's agenda. We're going Republican, straight ticket for the first time ever. But you know what? I'm not even a fan of that. At this point, I think the Republicans are a speed bump, which won't do anything. And I'm looking at the Mises caucus because I stand on principle. Do I think they can win? Honestly, in some areas, yes, I do. Maybe a congressional seat here or there. The presidency, not as optimistic. But my hopes and dreams don't matter when it comes to my principles. And I actually really, I would say this. Do I agree with the Mises Caucus guys 100%? No. But I will tell you, first and foremost, Dave Smith, Michael Malice, I would take any day of the week over the Republicans or the Democrats, especially with a Michael Malice press secretary. This country needs a cold splash of water in the face, a wake-up call. However, that being said, there are some things Republicans can do. If we see populist, more libertarian types, people like Rand Paul, for instance, running Republican, I might say freedom is the most important issue for me. So that's who I'm going to vote for over the Democrats. The problem with the Democrats is that even if they bring in someone who is moderate and reasonable and plays to my sensibilities and liberty, and there are some, they're going to bend the knee to Nancy Pelosi or whoever ends up, leading the establishment. So I don't trust them to do the right thing. And I really do not see any circumstance at all where I would vote Democrat. Just not going to happen. You fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I saw what happened in 2018. Moderate Democrats said we're running. I didn't think they could win. They did. And then immediately they go for the culture war route. So they say this. Democrats' approval of the job Biden is doing has remained high and not varied by more than 8 points since he took office. Their highest rating of Biden was 98% in late January, early February, and their lowest is the current 90%. Republicans' ratings of Biden are similarly stable at the other extreme, ranging from 12% in February and July to 6% this month. Independents have shown the greatest variation in their opinions of how Biden is doing. Biden's current 37% approval rating among independents is his lowest to date and 24 points below his personal high of 61. 2/3 of Biden's slide among independents since he took office has occurred in the past 3 months. Look at this. Biden started with a honeymoon phase among independents, 61% approval. Now it's at 37. That is brutal. But let's go beyond Gallup, okay? Let's go beyond Gallup. The important factor here is independence. Let's take a look at Real Clear Politics. Now, I like to use the aggregate polling more than anything else, simply because I think it paints a better picture. You've got here Monmouth saying he's above water. You've got even, what is this, Fox News? Is that Fox News saying Biden's +1 of all outlets. But you look at Rasmussen, the latest. 40% approval, 58% disapproval. Trump didn't have a honeymoon phase. They just hated him from the get-go. But Joe Biden's lost it. Can we really sustain this country with another president who is mostly disapproved? Now, you can sit here and tell me you liked Trump and all that stuff. That's fine. You can sit here and tell me you like Biden. I'm saying if most people are saying they don't approve of him, take into consideration. Also take into consideration, you've got likely voters, registered voters, and it's sample sizes. So it's not perfect. Rasmussen, 40 to 58. That is massive. That's seriously massive. And then we have here Reuters Ipsos, 44 approval to 51% disapproval. This is bad news. Over at Civics, we can see that independent voters absolutely are leading the charge with a 59% disapproval and only a 30% approval among 105,546 responses. Now, that's not definitive proof. You can look at Gallup. Gallup says 37 approval, or you can choose Civics. I'm not going to tell you which one's the right one. I use multiple polls to try and show some balance. Real Clear Politics, I think, does it. I think does a better job showing the aggregate. But independent voters are the ones who will decide the midterms. Take a look at this. I love it. From CNN, this poll number will send Democrats into a panic. From Chris Cillizza of all outlets, even CNN is saying, guys, pay attention. The single biggest indicator of how the 2022 midterm elections will go is how the two parties think, is how they think about President Joe Biden. Which, if you're a Democrat candidate looking toward trying to win a race in a swing state or district in November, the latest bad news on that came Thursday in a new NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll. Biden's approval in the survey slid all the way to 43, a drop of 6 points. His disapproval shot up to 51%. Those numbers for Biden and Democrats are bad, obviously, but there's another number buried in that question that should worry them even more. And it's this. 41% of people said they strongly disapprove of the job Biden is doing, while just 19% strongly approve of how he's handling his job as president. What that number suggests is that there is a major passion gap between the two party bases. Democrats like Biden, some even love him, but Republicans hate him, and independents. with 82% saying they strongly disapprove of how he's doing his job. That sort of energy disparity between the two party bases is, if history is any guide, a recipe for disaster for Democratic candidates for Congress. This from Gallup's Jeffrey Jones saying, quote, in Gallup's polling history, presidents with job approval ratings below 50% have seen their party lose 37 House seats on average in midterm elections. That compares with an average loss of 14 seats when presidents had approval ratings above 50%. So they are on track for a midterm smackdown, no matter what happens. With Biden's approval rating this bad, the panic is a setting in. From the Hill. And I love this too. Take a look at the ground news bias-o-meter. That's what I call it. Where you can see which outlets are reporting this. 63% of the outlets reporting Democratic panic come from the left. 12 are moderate and 25% are Republicans. Panic begins to creep into Democratic talks on Biden agenda. His agenda is a failing, my friends. So here's what we need. A tremendous opportunity. As we enter the midterm cycle, we're a few months away from 2022, and then we got until November. What we need to do is make sure primaries are happening. We got Sean Parnell running in Pennsylvania. Good dude. Let's see him win the primary. I am not going to be voting for any establishment crony shill. I will probably not be voting for any incumbent. But if you get a more politically initiated populist candidate on the Republican ticket, you'll get my vote. Because if they come to me and say something about, conservative issues, I'll be like, look, man, I may disagree with you on some of those, tax issues or economic issues. But if you're about freedom, you're going to defend us from this indoctrination and this tyranny and the woke. I'd prefer freedom over authoritarianism any day. And that's why I say populist. That's why I won't vote for establishment neocon garbage. If you've got one of these, these guys in office who have been sitting in office for a long time, they don't do anything, not interested. You bring me a populist who says, I'm here to represent my constituents, then I'll say, okay, I'll vote for that. We'll see, though. While the Hill says panic begins to creep, they say, well, the Democrats aren't panicking yet. It's just a sense of urgency and frustration among lawmakers as the budget deal is, the deal is nowhere in sight. I do think it's funny that's like, it's not panic. It's just frustration and a sense of urgency. And I'm like, are you describing panic to me? Yeah, the Democrats are panicking. Now, I'm not going to pretend like this is them pulling their hair out, screaming and banging on walls just yet. There's different degrees to which there may be panic. But when the mainstream media is coming out, when the Hill is coming out, when Axios releases a poll saying Biden trust takes a blow as COVID lingers, you better believe they are starting to worry behind the scenes. And why do I say panic? It's because I've already seen the tweets from establishment shills saying, guys, this is it. If we lose the midterms, it's all over. They're acting like it's all Donald Trump. Biden is losing when it comes to COVID, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to the Democratic agenda. And Biden is losing among black voters. From the National Review, Biden's approval rating among black voters falls after private sector vaccine mandate. They report Biden's favor among black voters dropped substantially between an initial poll conducted between September 6th and 8th, just before Biden's mandate, and a second poll taken from September 18th to 20th of more than 1,000 black voters. The second poll revealed that 71% of black voters approve of Biden's performance, down 5 points since the mandate. The share who disapprove rose 7 points to 24%. 37% said they strongly approve of his performance, while 14% said they strongly disapprove. The president's net approval rating, a measure of the share who approve his job performance minus the share who disapprove, has dropped 12% among black voters. Biden announced earlier this month his administration would develop rules to compel large companies to mandate coronavirus vaccines. It's part of a larger initiative, this we understand. They're going to say that 38% of black voters who say they have not received a COVID-19 vaccine disapprove of the president's job performance. Black Americans are the least likely of all racial and ethnic demographics to have received a COVID-19 vaccine. The survey results come days after Black Lives Matter organizers claimed New York City's vaccine mandate has disenfranchised black people, and they are correct that it did. Quote, being a doctor does not protect you from anti-blackness. Having a vaccination card does not protect you from discrimination. The 1964 Civil Rights Act prohibits the actions of carmines. It says it is illegal to discriminate against you on the basis of race. Newsom said, Shavona Newsom, Newsom's remarks were made during a protest at Carmine's restaurant. So you saw this story. We covered it. Just another example of how Joe Biden is losing support among key demographics. Newsweek says, as Biden popularity falls, Democrats fear losing the Senate and 30 to 50 House seats. Wow, man. This one could be big. A majority in both houses, or I'm sorry, I should say in both chambers. There you go. That's the right word. Upper and lower. And what do we hear from our good friend Daniel Turner? He's been on the show several times over at Timcast IRL. As he said, I believe it was Daniel, I may be wrong. He said when the Republicans take back the House and the Senate, they should abolish the filibuster and just ram everything through. You know what? I get it. Boy, are we in trouble. Here's why. The Democrats aren't getting rid of the filibuster, namely because of Manchin and Sinema, West Virginia and Arizona. Moderate Democrats saying we're not going to play into that stuff. If the Democrats just ram through their agenda, Republicans will, the hyper-partisan divide in this country will just get worse. If Republicans do it, divide will get worse. If the Republicans don't do it, they will just effectively be sitting on their hands doing nothing as Democrats rule by edict. So what do? Personally, I suppose there's no answer. I'm not a fan of I think the filibuster is a good thing. I think we need compromise. But if only one side is willing to do so, we're in trouble. We're absolutely in trouble. Over at CNN, they say Democrats look to Virginia governor race for early signs of trouble in 2020. The Virginia gubernatorial race between Democrat Terry McAuliffe and Republican Glenn Youngkin is highlighting early warning signs for Democrats about what lies ahead. Yeah, the polling is really good for Glenn Youngkin, a Republican in a state almost entirely Democratic. From Bloomberg Law, midterm fears quicken pace on Biden judicial nomination. So it is a coming, my friends. And the Democrats have one potential saving grace. From Real Clear Politics, Trump admits the midterms are about him, not the GOP. Well, there you go. Could you imagine? And I hope this happens. It won't, but how glorious would it be if the Republicans win the House and then nominate Donald Trump as Speaker of the House? And then Donald Trump is approved as Speaker of the House. It would be amazing. I don't think Trump would do it. Bannon mentioned it. I think it would be hilarious and be fun to see. I don't think that's going to happen. However, if Donald Trump really is the defining factor in the midterms, Republicans are in trouble because nothing lights a fire under Democrats more than the orange man. Real Clear Politics says, nearly 9 months after Trump cost the GOP 2 Senate seats in a runoff election in Georgia and handed control of the upper chamber to Democrats, Republicans heard him tacitly endorse Democrat Stacey Abrams for governor Saturday night in the Peach State. As outrageous as it is to Republicans and as damaging as it is to their turnout strategy in next year's midterm election, the comment isn't surprising. While Trump was in Georgia to tout the candidates he has endorsed for Senate, Secretary of State, Lieutenant Governor, he spent time, just as he did in January, attacking the governor, Brian Kemp. Trump has yet to find a primary challenger to run against Kemp, and Abrams is believed to be prepping for another run against him. Stacey, would you like to take his place? The former president said. It's okay with me. It wasn't just an aside, a moment of Trumpian exuberance, because he also said this. Of course, having her, I think, might be better than having your existing governor. If you want to know the truth, might very well be better. Wow. This wasn't the first time Trump has expressed support for Democrats running against Republicans who either voted for his impeachment or have defied his big lie and backed the legitimate results of the election. Referring last week to Rep. David Vallado, who voted to impeach him, Trump said in a radio interview, The John Fredericks Show, I would almost rather have a Democrat win than those people. I agree with Donald Trump. Depending on the Democrat. Look, I'll take a moderate who reluctantly says fine to the Democrats than liars. At least you can look at the Democrat and say you know what you get with them. These Republicans who are just ceding to the Democrats, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. But I'll be completely honest. If they're going to be voting for Democrats, they're Democrats. If these Republicans are voting along with Democrats, they're Democrats. So it's not about whether a Republican wins. It's about the fact that they're Republicans in name only, like most of the Republicans who don't really do anything. Or I suppose that's actually indicative of what the Democrats do represent. So, sure, perhaps the reality is that's what Democrats represent. And these Republicans, they're just Democrats as it is. Okay, then I don't know who to vote for. You better come out show me some populists. Over at Fox News, they say, with 13 months until the midterms, 4 senators mum on if they're returning for re-election in 2022. They say, while that may seem like a long time to go, the race has long been well underway, with contenders announcing their candidacies, fundraising in full swing, and campaign ads already running in hot contests across the country. Republicans are defending 20 of the 34 Senate seats up for grabs next year, but they need a net gain of just 1 seat to win back the majority in the chamber they lost when the Democrats swept January's twin Georgia runoff. The oldest member of the Senate, Chuck Grassley, on Friday said he would seek re-election next year to another 6-year term. Chairman Ron Johnson talks with a reporter before Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee on December 16th. Johnson has yet to say if he's seeking a third term in the 2022 midterms. Johnson vowed in 2016 to only serve 2 terms, but he's left open the possibility of running again. I have plenty of time to make that decision. He may actually bow out. John Thune, a Republican. John Thune speaks during they say he has a Senate minority whip. The number 2 Republican in the chamber has not said if he'll run in 2022 for a 4th term. Lisa Murkowski, Patrick Leahy, a Democrat from Vermont. So we've got potentially 3 Republicans who might not seek re-election. Republicans have to have a net gain of 1, and this is bad. Incumbencies tend to do better, but we'll see. Now, I won't say it's overall bad, however. I actually think we should get all the incumbents out, so I look forward to seeing what happens. You know, if Lisa Murkowski's out, don't care. John Thune and Ron Johnson, okay, fine, whatever. Primary them. Let's see someone better. How about Sean Parnell? Is the guy perfect? Oh, come on, let's not be silly. I wouldn't call anybody perfect. Neither would you. But he's a good dude. And I think he would do a tremendously better job than the establishment politicians. That's why they don't like the guy. The establishment is not a fan, and Trump endorsed Sean. So I look forward to seeing him win in Pennsylvania. And if they can flip any seat, if they can take control in any jurisdiction, I think they're dealing with a retirement in Pennsylvania. So this should be interesting. We'll see. Over at Jacobin, got to give a shout out to the Jacobins. Democrats will probably lose the midterms, but they don't have to. Yeah, they'll probably lose. They don't have to, but it's what they would have to do to win is just, I don't think it's going to happen. What you need to understand is that, let me tell you about this movie phenomenon. I remember when Pirates of the Caribbean came out. I did not go and see it in theaters. I didn't know what it was. I didn't care, whatever. I heard great things, though. People were like, dude, it's so good. You got to see it. So I saw it on DVD. I mean, this was a long time ago, right? Now you'd be watching it on HBO Max or whatever. I saw it on DVD, and it was incredible. It was so good that when they announced a sequel, I went to the theaters to see it. But the sequel was not good. I thought it was bad. I thought it was campy. I thought instead of making a great story with good characters like they did in the first one, all they did was just try and rehash the same old jokes. And it was like a hollow shell, a facade. Why does this matter? The Democrats don't have to lose, but people vote based on that facade. So right now you have taint. The Democratic Party has tainted their image. It doesn't matter if someone comes out and says, I'm going to fix this and do these things. They're going to be like, Democrats. There's nothing you can do when the president in office is bad and people want opposition to the president. So they'll go out and they'll vote for Republicans. Not that I think the Republicans are going to solve any of these problems necessarily, but people, they're not voting, in my opinion, based off what you say. They're voting based off what they feel. Now, as for the Democrats, they feel ridiculous and wrong things because of the mainstream media. But many people and independent voters are going to be like, I don't feel good. I feel bad. Everything that's happening, the economy, I'm just tired of it. Donald Trump and the Republicans promised to reopen everything. I know people back in Illinois who are complaining about how bad it is with the restrictions and the masks and the vaccine mandates. They say, I just want it to go back to normal. Okay. You're not going to get that with Democrats. With Democrats, it's more lockdowns. Guaranteed. Now, they'll blame everyone else. Only thing they know how to do is lock everything down. With Republicans, they'll probably slowly start reopening things. Not every single one, but make sure that they're in opposition to the establishment moves, and then there you go. So if you live in one of these swing states and you're tired of the boot being on your neck, your only real option is to oppose the Democrats who are imposing these things. The challenge, I suppose, the reason I won't say to vote Republican, because Republicans may very well just be establishment and do nothing. They might actually come out in agreement with the Democrats, in which case maybe supporting the Libertarian Party is your best bet. Here's what I think we need. I think we need like one libertarian candidate to actually win. You know, we've had some people switch parties. No, we need people to say, I choose something different from the two-party machine. It's not easy. But if there's any congressional district that goes libertarian, that would send a message. A third party is possible. First past the post voting. That's what we have. One person, one vote. It's a bad system. It's bad. Sorry. There's a lot of things I like about this government the founding fathers came up with, but first past the post is bad. We need something better than I vote against your guy. Parliamentary systems seem to be okay. If there's a jurisdiction with, 10% for one party and 50 for another and then 40 for another, well, then that's how they apportion seats in parliament, right? Something like that. At least then you'll have some representation from the people. I think that makes a lot of sense. Right now we have politicians that don't represent anybody. They represent the feelings of opposing the other side, and then who knows what you get. I got to be honest, I'm surprised this country is functioning right now with this dysfunctional political system. But I don't know what's going to happen. A year is a long ways away. Right now, it's bad news for Democrats. Maybe Kamala Harris comes in, the 25th Amendment. She then turns things around. Her approval rating goes up, and then we'll see. However, as the data shows, even with approval ratings for the president, they lose seats in the House. So we shall see. In the end, for now, bad news for Democrats. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Check it out. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.